we hear a lot about the younger generation, right? We hear a lot about what millennials or Gen Z or what they want or what they don't want, and there seems to have been a lot of guesswork in the certainly the large corporate world, that there's assumptions about the way they want to work or the style they want to work or the kind of workplace they want to be in, and also often it seems that they're missing the mark. That there is a desire for mentorship, there is a desire for feedback, but perhaps the elder generation is just struggling to communicate effectively to the younger generation of up and coming leaders. And I know this is obviously a passion of yours as we try to develop leaders of the future. Have you seen a real change in that millennial and Gen Z generation about how we're developing those leaders? Or is it really the same way it's always been, but maybe technology is just changing the way people absorb that content, or perhaps because we're in a slightly different environment and people think that they have a certain trajectory they have to follow because they've seen their peers doing it, that somehow that changes it? Is it always been this way, or is there something really different about our young generation here and how we're training them?
Well, I don't know if it's a case of how we're training them per se. I think there's a difference in preference of how they grow and develop. I think the younger generations want more of a coaching style development and feedback versus the traditional "I'm the boss, here's the direct, feedback." So I see that difference. Um, I think as I say, I think the bigger thing goes back to the leadership crisis, the leadership gap, where they're moving into these higher level positions at a much younger age, which is fine, which is great, but they haven't had the same opportunity to, I guess, ride shotgun with an experienced leader. So I think it's more so that they're missing the experience of others. When I look back on my career, um, perhaps I was very fortunate. I worked for some very reputable companies with very senior and very experienced leaders. And so I learned a lot through osmosis from just being able to be witness to major organizational change, major organizational crises, et cetera, where I wasn't maybe the major decision maker, but I was part of discussions, meetings, and fallout of these issues, and seeing how other leaders with much more experience than me made decisions and how they approach things. And I think that's missing a lot in today's workforce. Again, I attribute it just to the fact of the busyness, as well as there's this they've moved into higher level positions so much younger, they've missed that opportunity. I'm not saying they're not capable, they're not intelligent. Absolutely they are. They just haven't had the luxury, I guess, as people like myself, where it took us a little bit longer to get into those positions. And as a result of that, we were able to witness and participate in things more indirectly than directly.
So there's no substitute for experience, but let's say you're a young leader and you find yourself in this spot. You have been thrust into a leadership position, perhaps earlier than you were ready. Maybe you even acknowledge that you weren't 100% ready, but here it is. What would your advice be to somebody who finds themselves in that situation? You can't just invent 5 years of experience, but there's probably some things that you can do. Perhaps it's the right time to reach out to a larger professional network and start gaining as much counsel as you can. Tell us a little bit about what your advice would be to somebody who finds themselves in that spot.
That's it exactly, Brian. I believe wholeheartedly in having a professional network. And I'm not talking about thousands of people. I'm talking about a small group of core professional network of people you trust, and respect. And I don't think that's changed. That's something that I believed in and had throughout my career. Still leverage it today. And so when I was faced with challenges, or as I was faced with big decisions, I'd reach out to that handful of people. Usually they were in different organizations. They weren't in the same company as I was, which was even more beneficial because you get a different perspective. Not necessarily the right perspective, but they challenge your thinking, give you different things to think about. But I think it's very important that you have that network that you can reach out to, bounce some ideas off, get different experiences, and really think through things. And sometimes just the fact of talking to somebody else kind of turns on the light bulb for you, or you realize, oh, you know what, I'm going down the wrong path here. let alone the feedback that you may get from those people as well. Very beneficial.